Hello music makers, welcome back. At some point in our dance music production journey, eventually everyone realizes how crucial a good kick drum is. It's half of the entire foundation of your track, after all. I guarantee you, everyone who produces dance music has struggled with this one at some point. But no longer. Today we're going to look at some super easy ways to get the same kick drum as your heroes. In some cases, even better. And no, it's not sampling. It's resynthesis. There's a paid option, although not expensive at all. And there's a free alternative, which I think is going to surprise many of you. Let's go. So first we're going to look at the paid option, and this is mostly because it actually shows us under the hood of what a kick really is. Understanding that first will help us understand and appreciate the free option later. So here I've got Kick 3. Not sponsored, by the way, this is just one I own and use. And here's the key feature we're discussing today, import. Here is where we can show it our favorite kick drum, and it's going to make us, or resynthesize us, one of its own that's pretty close. So last week I did a video on DJ Heartstring. I didn't have a lot of time to go searching through all of my kick samples, so I used Kick 3 to get me really close, really fast. That's what she said. Anyway, let me show you what that process looks like. So first I'm going to initialize the preset, make sure there's no EQs or effects already loaded. Then we just drag in the track we want a kick drum from. In my case, I took DJ Heartstring's Will You Remember Me? That seemed like the best average of all their kicks. And yes, as far as I can hear, they have a different kick on every track. I'll discuss a little bit more about that later. Anyway, now we have to find a window where there's a reasonably clean kick drum. Usually you can find one in the intros or outros of the extended mix. Unfortunately for this track, there isn't. The best I could find is near the outro. There's still a lead ambient sound going on, but there's no bass part interfering with the sub-frequencies, luckily. Sounds like this. By the way, keep a listen out if the kick sounds weaker in the outro or intro sections than it does in the main drops. Sometimes producers won't use the full kick in those sections, so you need to make sure you're grabbing the full thing. If you're in doubt, you can always confirm with an analyzer, see if the low end is reaching the same peaks as the heaviest point. Anyway, let's narrow this window down. Okay, with this plugin, you need to be quite forensic with the start point. Although it has many editing options for everything else, that's one of the things you can't really adjust well later. Okay, that looks good. Let's click Analyze. What it's going to do now is give us two layers, a sub element and a click. The sub is the resynthesized element. That's the main tone and frequency of the kick. And the click is basically the rest of the sample. Here's the click. And here's the sub. Let me drag this sub into our first layer here, and then the click into the second layer. Let's deal with the click first. That's easiest. Let's solo that. We just need the very, very beginning, the clicky bit. So we're going to make sure we're on amplitude, as in volume, and we're going to adjust this volume envelope so we just have the very, very start. Like that. Right, let's look at the sub. Hit solo on that. Let's look at the volume envelope first. Looks okay. Occasionally you might see the odd spike, in which case you can just double click nodes to get rid of them, or there's a right click function to simplify. Then if we move over to the pitch tab, we're looking for any similar anomalies. Let's put this in logarithmic view so we can see a little better. By the way, beware, in logarithmic view, the nodes no longer line up with the waveform or the grid. It's just to make it easier to see. Okay, I can leave that as is. Let's listen to both of those together. Nice. Now, sometimes you'll find the result is a little bit under-leveled compared to the reference. If you don't know, kick drums in most electronic genres tend to be reaching near zero, so we want to be aiming near there too. The kick in DJ Heartstrings was no exception. I could just export this sample and turn it up, or the quickest way to do this within Kick 3 itself, instead of adjusting all the layers individually down here, this limiter threshold in Kick 3 has automatic makeup gain, so as I pull this down, it will bring up the level to compensate. It says we're minus 2.8 under there, so let's add a few dB. And let's compare. Pretty good. Now, before we move on, I'm sure many of you watching won't have seen an older video I did on tuning kicks, and it's worth talking about while we're looking at this pitch tab in Kick 3 here, because there's a lot of misinformation going around still. So if you haven't found this out before now, the main element of a kick is just effectively a pitched sine wave. It starts high and descends lower. As you can see, it starts up there and it continues falling. If you don't believe me, look, we can do the same thing in Vital or any synth that has good envelope control. Here's a patch I've just thrown together. Just a sine wave being pitched by this envelope over about 5 octaves. And then some noise on a very quick envelope for the click. If I slow down this envelope, you'll hear the pitch moving in more slow motion. So that's what's going on with a kick drum. Now, for some reason, many producers think you need to tune your kick to the key of the track. For many genres, this is terrible advice, in my opinion. Hopefully, as you've just noticed, a kick drum goes through a lot of different pitches over time. Kick drums in most genres don't have a musical pitch. There's no discernible note there. It's usually moving too fast. For most genres, the job of the kick drum is exactly that. It's a drum. It's a percussion instrument, not a melodic instrument. If you tune it to the same note as your bass, all that's going to happen in the club is one long droning tone that people can't dance to. A phenomenon which is made even worse if anyone attempts to master that track too. Not to mention, what do you think is going to happen in genres that have chord progressions, where the bass is going to change notes through the progression? Do you want a chord progression that keeps sounding like it returns to chord 1 every time the kick drum plays? Are we going to tune a separate kick for every different note? Well, they do that in trap music, but again, that's an example where the bass has been replaced by the 808. The long drone of the tuned 808 becomes the bass part. That's an example of a kick drum which does have musical pitch. The ones that settle on a single vibration for long enough at the end of their tail can be considered a note, but unless you're in a genre where the kick drum is the bass instead of a separate bass instrument part, like the trap example I just gave, or hardstyle, or certain types of techno. In the other genres, that's not what's going on. While we've got this kick drum from DJ Heartstring open, we can see it ends on G1. Well, this track is in G sharp, so as you can see, it's not tuned. And what's more, in terms of mix clarity, a separate pitch for your kick helps distinguish it in the club. The kicks in these genres don't tend to drone on a note. And what's more, because we can only really have one subtone at once, this is why we sidechain one away from the other, and the kick drums tend to be shorter. In fact, if you were to ask me to improve DJ Heartstring's mix, not that I think it needs it, they're going for more lo-fi kind of bedroom-produced sound, aren't they? But if you asked me, one of the things I would try is actually moving this kick drum down another semitone and shortening it, and you can see how much control a plugin like this would give me over that. Anyway, sorry, I had to get that off my chest. Let's look at the free alternative now. Okay, here it is. It's called Drum Clone by Rare DSP. Technically, still in beta, it's not finished, but it is working fully. This plugin has one massive advantage over the paid options. It's actually a lot faster to get very good results. Look at this. We just drag in our reference track, same controls, click and drag to find the section with the cleanest kick drum. You'll also notice it's automatically playing back what it's analyzed. No need to trigger any MIDI. Just neaten up the start and end points. And we're there already. And it's practically identical. Now, the big disadvantage of this plugin, however, is it doesn't really have any editing to speak of. So if it doesn't manage to grab the kick drum, or there's an error somewhere or a glitch, you don't really have any options. What we do have are 6 controls here. Recover is the main one. That's the synthesized sub-element, as far as I can tell. That's these light green nodes here. And this just gives you control over the envelope of that. The blue nodes, labeled sensitivity, those are a bit like the click element in Kick 3. By default, this usually sounds great, but if you need to let through any more of the original sample, you can turn these up. There's 2 other nodes here which are off by default. There's noise and tonality. I find the noise parameter particularly useful for those kicks where part of the attack was a bit of the hi-hat that was originally sampled. This seems to let some of that through. You won't hear it do much here though, because we didn't sample a kick that had a hi-hat on it. The red node is the opposite of noise. It's tonality. If you didn't know, those two things are opposites of each other. So this is if you want to let any tonal elements through. That means musical pitches as opposed to noise. So by turning this up, we should hear some of that original chord. I've never used this, and I'm not sure where you would, but maybe what you thought was the kick drum in your reference track actually turned out to be part of the bass sound as well. This might let some of that back in. Have a play around. And that just leaves mono. That just makes the sample mono. I recommend you put this on at all times. Anything stereo in the sub-range is just asking for trouble, in my opinion. And then there's control over the volume with amplitude here. Now, one more thing before you all run off and start grabbing your favorite kicks. I just wanted to give you a few tips on what kicks you should be looking out for. First of all, I want you to know there is no such thing as a perfect kick drum. I remember the first time I got my hands on the actual kick drum from someone famous. I can't say who because I might get someone in trouble, even though it was a long time ago. But one of the clients I was working for at the time was using the same mastering engineer as the artist we were idolizing. And because he was stem mastering that track, he had the kick separate. And he was kind enough to let us borrow it. As you might imagine, that kick drum went on every single track we made for like the next 3, 4, 5 months. But eventually, reality came crashing down. It became apparent that as good as it was for a couple of tracks, that kick drum did not work at all in others. So there is no perfect kick, but there can be a near-perfect context. So before we get grabbing, let me tell you the 3 contexts to be looking out for. Number 1. Does the kick drum you're about to grab work in the same destinations that you hope your track to appear in? Like maybe the club, small clubs, outdoors destinations, or maybe airports, or just the same genre, it could just be. Sounds obvious, I know, but you'd be surprised how many don't consider this. Second, does it appear in the same kind of bass context? Meaning, is it the same kind of bass part and sound that you're going to be going for? Does their track have a long, sustained respace, but yours uses a short, stabby house rhythm? Chances are that kick drum might not work as well as you think. Kicks and bass are fully complementary. They make each other sound different in different contexts, so be listening out for that. Third, is the track from which you're grabbing this kick in a similar key? Because it's not just bass sound that affects the kick, it's the key as well, the pitch. If you saw my Pro Bass video, I discussed this very issue there. A kick drum that's working in a track that's in G might not work in a track that's in B. So ideally, you're looking to grab a kick drum from something in a similar key. By that, I mean if your track is in F, you want to be grabbing a kick drum that's from a track either in F or F sharp or one below like E. So in summary, be looking out for these 3 things. Is it for a similar destination? Is it for a similar bass style? And is it in a similar key? Okie dokie, if you found the video helpful, let me know with a like or a sub, or if you're feeling really generous, there's a link in the description to buy me a coffee. If you've got any questions, get typing down there, and until next week, I will see you down there in the comments. Bye-bye!